Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. So, hopefully you guys didn't have any money in the stock market today because it was a bloodbath on Wall Street. Some of the indexes were down almost 5% in one day. These drops are, I don't want to say unheard of because since 2020 nothing's unheard of, but it's getting scary out there, put it this way, for people's retirement savings plans. Whatever money you have in any sort of ETFs or funds, be very careful right now because people are getting wiped out. And because of that, every day now I'm going to show you something that I'm wearing right now. I got to take the microphone off. 1 second. Every day we're going to step up the level of body armor as things get worse. Let's see if this is going to work. Maybe we're going to have to put it over here. There we go. So this is Premier Body Armor. Very similar to the shirt I showed you yesterday. It's level 3A body armor, but it provides side protection, more coverage. This is something you would wear under a jacket. Remember, it's all about the gray man. Go check out Premier Body Armor, coupon code PREPPER for 10% off. It's a great deal, 10% off, made in America stuff. We're going to be doing a more in-depth review of this stuff. This is level 3A, so this is only going to stop a pistol, gun, I think up to 357 Magnum, and 22, I would imagine, possibly. Don't quote me on that. We'll have all the specs and details laid out for you guys in greater detail. But you can also insert another plate over your core here, which will actually provide you more protection to go up to the level 3+ protection, which will protect against rifle fire for your vital section here. Anyways, the reason why I, of course, am talking about this kind of stuff, because as the socioeconomic contraction worsens, we're going to see an increase in crime. People are going to be getting more and more desperate as we go deeper and deeper into the recession and possible depression. Now, a few stories to talk about today. I don't know which one I want to talk about first. I guess, we'll start where we usually start with the war in Ukraine. It's this Azovstal surrender, which is what it was, is likely going to have far worse implications for the Ukrainian military than meets the eye. Because I believe the Azov battalion they were some of the best fighters in the Ukrainian forces, and symbolically, I think it represented a lot to have them capitulate. I mean, what other choice did they have? To be brutally honest, I mean, those guys fought as hard as they could, and unfortunately, they were forced to surrender, and likely now they're going to face prosecution, who knows, God knows what, interrogation, possible torture, who knows what's going to happen. Because if you don't know, there's a long history with that specific battalion of troops or regiment of troops, which is more like, because there's a lot more, they're much more numerous than a battalion. But what this means is that it's going to be a blow to Ukrainian morale in other parts of the country. We do have reports that Zelensky is saying that he's going to extend the martial law for another 90 days because they're anticipating a protracted conflict. The Russians have committed to a protracted conflict, and they're expelling diplomats from dozens of countries. The Foreign Ministry has declared dozens of French, Italian, and Spanish diplomats persona non grata in response to the expulsion of Russian diplomatic staff. So we're seeing the rift between Russia and Europe growing. And the thing to understand here, guys, is that there's only one way this is going to end, or two ways it's going to end. And I've talked about this before. It's either going to end in nuclear Armageddon, or it's going to end in Russia taking over the entirety of Ukraine and NATO saying, okay, we're going to go and fight a war somewhere else, perhaps in Iran, like we're going to talk about today. Those are really the only two options, because Russia cannot afford to allow the Ukrainians to, and remember, we try to view this from a bird's eye view, an uninvested, it's not about I'm on this side or that side. Obviously, I'm on this side, but when we're trying to analyze what's going on the ground so that we can make effective decisions to inform our planning, we need to look at it as objectively as possible. And from the Russians' perspective, if they were to take the Donbass, Mariupol, and create the land bridge to Crimea and just settle on that, the Ukrainians would rearm and they would stage a counteroffensive, which they said they are going to do. Okay, they're insisting on reclaiming that territory at some point or another, which means that Russia only has one option, and that is to take over the entire country, which means a protracted conflict. So this war is going to extend, and that is why the markets are crashing, because they know it. They know that at this point in time, and this is the thing, it ends bad for us either way, because either Russia gets pushed back to its own borders and it deems this to be an existential threat and it fires off a tactical nuke, or two, we respond, NATO gets involved, it escalates to World War III. The other option is that Russia takes over the entirety of Ukraine, or that in some way, shape, or form, some sort of agreement gets signed between Kiev and Russia that they are not going to stage a counteroffensive on Mariupol or whatever other territory Russia has encountered, which Kiev has insisted they're not going to do, because they, as many people know, are at the behest of NATO. So, I mean, this is the quagmire of all quagmires, if you want to call it that, but it's going to end bad. You know, I try to see the silver lining that might come of this situation, is try to see the light at the end of the tunnel. I try to be optimistic, but it just does not look like this ends in anything but disaster. Okay? Both France and Italy condemned Moscow's decision to expel their diplomats, with Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi even calling the expulsions a hostile act. He emphasized the importance of diplomatic channels by saying it is through those channels that if we succeed, peace will be achieved, and that is certainly what we want. Unfortunately, that is not what we're going to get. There's too much sway in the military-industrial complex. They need a boogeyman, and I know a lot of people just think it's all about good guys and bad guys in the world, but life is not so simple, okay? Unfortunately, we live in a world which is driven by fiscal motives, and as a result of that, there are lobbyists and there are big corporations. There's big money to be made by having a big, scary boogeyman out there in the East to justify the inflated military budgets and increase NATO spending, increase NATO expansion, and all the rest. So it is what it is. We are destined to fight World War III, which is why you might as well get yourself some body armor, because sooner or later you are definitely going to need it. As a result of this, of course, the EU is going to have to unveil a rationing plan for their gas, because there is going to be an increasing stress on the gas supply in Europe. And what they're talking about now is trying to increase their reliance on renewable energy sources. And they're going to try to do this by putting compulsory solar panels on homes. Now, recall that I said that because of this global decoupling, the climate stuff is going to go out the window. Nobody's going to care about that anymore, because it's going to be all about how can you keep your industry going and prevent people from rioting in the streets. When it comes down to it, the leaders of this world will choose staying in power, preventing people from rioting and starving, than fixing whatever climate issues might exist that may be anthropogenically caused. And let's not get in a debate about that. It is what it is. The fact of the matter is they're saying this, but the reality is this. Who's going to build the solar panels? Who's going to build the electronic infrastructure that's going to be required for all this stuff? Okay, the chips. I mean, there's nobody to build this stuff right now. And you could argue, okay, we'll get industry going in 5 years or something to be able to churn out this amount of renewable windmills and solar panels and all the rest. It's just not, and here's the thing, and not many people realize this. You guys know I'm an electric car guy, because I firmly believe if you can have a large enough solar array at your home that a electric vehicle is low maintenance. It's one of the best investments you can make for preparedness and survival because it also acts as a storage for your power that you get off the grid, okay? Anyways, I made lots of videos on it, neither here nor there. The problem with that, the problem with a lot of EVs nowadays is what they're moving towards, is that it's actually, it's a greater carbon footprint to power an electric vehicle through electricity that was gained through a power plant which perhaps used gasoline or diesel to power the, to spin the thing to generate the electricity. There are power plants that use fossil fuels in order to generate electricity. It's much more efficient to just burn that fossil fuel because you're going to get more mileage to burn that fossil fuel in an old crappy ICE engine that you guys know I don't like, but we have to drive anyways. It's less efficient because you actually lose energy when converting that energy from fossil fuel to mechanical energy, okay, and then into the EV, okay? You're actually losing energy in that transaction instead of just combusting it in an ICE engine. You're actually going to get more mileage. And this is something that not a lot of people think about. You know, I'm a fan of EVs. It only really works from an environmental standpoint if you can get the solar panels made in a way which is environmentally friendly. Now, moving on, because we got too much stuff to talk about. We only got about 8 minutes left. Okay, let's just talk about nuclear stuff, okay? Russian Deputy Prime Minister Yuri Borisov has revealed that the new Prometheus S-500 anti-aircraft and anti-missile systems are being put into operation. One thing you got to hand it to the Russians, they have cool names for their missile systems. Prometheus, Satan, not really cool, but you get the picture. Moscow is now acquiring a Space Shield space defense system against ICBM. So these S-500 systems are going to be able to shoot down satellites. They're going to be able to shoot down ICBMs with incredible accuracy. They previously mass-produced the RS-28 Sarmat, which was designed to penetrate any current or future, that's a pretty bold statement, ballistic missile defense systems that might exist in Poland or Romania. So they have the Sarmat, which can overcome NATO's defense systems, and now they're going to have their own systems, which they boast are going to be able to stop intercontinental ballistic missile threats. Apparently, this thing is able to intercept up to 10 targets with a 4-second response time. Every system, every S-500 air defense system is able to do that it can deal with 10 incoming ballistic missiles simultaneously and has a response time of less than 4 seconds. Go and watch that video where I interview Dr. Peter Pry. If you still don't think that nuclear war is winnable, the Russians believe that a nuclear war is very winnable. Not many people know about this. And this is why you can't listen to people who don't understand all of the nuances of how a nuclear war would be waged. We talk with Lieutenant Colonel Jay Block, who also provided some very unique insights about this. Between those two videos that we did, between Dr. Peter Pry and Jay Block, if you don't understand how a country like Russia would be strategizing or to have it as a part of their nuclear doctrine to win a nuclear war potentially, if you don't think that they can win a nuclear war, you are out to lunch. I'd encourage you to inform yourself. So, as I talked about before, the Ukrainian war is only going to escalate. The Ukrainian Defense Minister Oleksiy Reznikov has called on Kiev's Western allies to coordinate more arms deliveries in order to liberate our territories as soon as possible. So right then and there, you know that that's a commitment to a counteroffensive against Russia, which is why Russia will have no choice but to continue past the Donbass, past the Dnipro River, and all the way to Lviv. Essentially, now there's talk that the Poles are going to move in or something with some kind of peacekeeping force. I guess we'll see if that transpires. Russia also kicked out the CBC. They kicked out the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. as a tit-for-tat move as a result of the Canadians kicking out, the Canadians, that's us, kicking out the Russia Today. It's a reprisal for Ottawa's decision to ban RT. The CRTC claimed that Russia Today's programming was not consistent with Canadian standards of policy objectives, and it was concerned that it sought to undermine the sovereignty of another country, demean Canadians of particular ethnic background, and undermine democratic institutions within Canada. The decision was announced after a campaign of complaints by ethnic Ukrainian organizations. Now, one thing I would say is that no matter where you stand on this issue, you should not want a digital iron curtain. The last thing you would want was to be less informed about what your opponent, your opposition, was thinking. I mean, it's just dumb to just block it out and pretend as if it doesn't exist. You want to know your enemy through and through. Now, guys, there is something going on, to change gears here, there's something going on in Iran right now. It's not getting a lot of media attention, and I believe that that is quite telling. There are food riots there. People are protesting the price of basic commodities, which is strange because in Iran, if you don't know, they have national oil subsidies, so the price that they pay for gasoline is like dirt cheap. Like the last I heard, this was years ago, I don't know if it's changed, but it was like 10 cents a liter or something like that, something ridiculously low. So if they're complaining about the price of food going up as high as it has and the price of inflation and all these commodities going up, then it must be pretty dire, it must be pretty serious. We know that there was that falling out of the Iranian nuclear deal that happened a few months ago, just around the same time that the war was getting started. And now it appears that Israel and the United States are going to be simulating an attack on the Iranian nuclear facilities in a joint military exercise. Now, if anybody is preparing for World War III, it's the Iranians. I'm not sure if you guys have seen the tunnels, the bunkers in Iran. They're probably as extensive as Finland or Russia or even parts of Ukraine in terms of the depth, and they're storing all their missiles, all their weapons underground. These guys are preparing for World War III. The writing is on the wall. They can see it. And this has happened in Iran before, where they've had these protests and they've had to crack down. And what a lot of people don't understand is that there is a concerted effort to cut the head off the snake, so to speak. There is a concerted effort to decapitate the Iranian leadership by NATO and its allies, and Israel, of course. And for that reason, they have no other choice but to become more authoritative. Now, you might just say, just have democratic elections. Yes, but there's people within that country with historical roots that go back, longer than most countries have existed, thousands of years, who know what that entails. It basically means forfeiting the country over to the multinational business interests, and they don't want to do that. Now, I'm not saying that there's not problems and there's not, religious fundamentalism and stuff like that, but like I say, if you want to understand what's truly going on in the world, you need to, and this is not making apologies. This is not talking about good guys and bad guys. There's bad guys on all sides, okay? This is something people need to get drilled into their heads. There's bad guys everywhere, including in your family, including on your block. When it comes to SHTF, a lot of the people who you might think are good guys are going to show their true colors. And the same thing is true. So I'm not one of these people who, criticizes NATO expansionism and criticizes, like the multinational business interest, the military industrial complex. I also see the reason for certain things, and I also realize that, there's some oligarchical, authoritarian bad guys on that side, definitely. But it's not just that. Anyways, so the Israelis and the Americans are doing this huge, large-scale anti-Iranian strike simulation, okay? And dozens of Israeli fighter jets will take part in the simulation of an attack on Iran's nuclear facilities. You must keep in mind that Russia has strong economic and strategic ties with Iran. And don't think that this is not going to be another opportunity. We've seen that Russia was firing at Israeli fighter jets in Syria just yesterday. So you see what's happening here. Okay, the Axis and the Allies are starting to become very, very distinguished. Turkey's on the fence. You got Hungary, Serbia, places like that, which are kind of on the fence. Anyways, we're running out of time here, guys. All I can say is, hey, I'm going to leave you with this now. Go check out Premier Body Armor. Get 10% off. Use coupon code PREPPER. Body armor is one of those things that's going to last a long time. Hopefully you never, ever have to use it, just like fire insurance. But if you need it, it's there. Stay safe, guys. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Canadian Prepper out.